Let's talk about the call after the fall. So I went live. It's on my YouTube channel where I basically talked about how Eve did not get the name Eve until after the fall in the Garden of Eden. When she was originally created, Adam looked at her and called her woman. But it wasn't until after the fall in the Garden of Eden that is when Adam named her Eve. And as much times as I know about the story about Adam and Eve in the garden, like during our fast, God highlighted that to me, okay? And then he gave me a revelation with understanding that most times, right, we don't really step into our purpose until something happens to bring us to the feet of Jesus. So a lot of people, just like myself, a lot of times we have an understanding of God. We know the right, maybe we know the right from the wrong. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you grew up in church, right? But the obedience factor is something that you did not take pretty much seriously, okay? Just like Eve. Eve, she disobeyed God, right? Maybe she was uncomfortable living. Maybe she was comfortable living in paradise. You know what I'm saying? And maybe she did not think that, this one act would have literally caused a lot of chaos, okay? Now I'm going to be transparent about myself, all right? I knew the times, okay, that where God would tell me to do something when it came to my spouse before things got really, 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 really bad, right? However, I did not take obedience very seriously. I did not take that to a place where I have to obey God because I took advantage of God's grace, okay? But it did not hit me until after I really, really, really did a number in my own disobedience. I had a part to play when it came to me and my spouse and the reason why things happened the way that they happened. So we both had our hands in it, but I'm talking about my part, okay? Because just like Adam knew what to do as well, but he did what he wanted to do as well. So they both disobeyed God, just like how I did and my spouse did, okay? But it wasn't until after that incident and I was called to stand is where God began to open up my eyes to my purpose. God began to show me who I really was, okay? Eve was given her assignment after she disobeyed God, all right? Because when we think about the confrontation and the consequence of being disobedient, we get called to a place of surrender. We get confronted by the Holy Spirit. We get brought to the feet of Jesus, just like how they did in the Garden of Eden, right? But the Garden of Eden really does teach us about the nature of God. Okay, God did not just wipe out the garden and literally started it all over. That's not who he was. He did teach them the importance of obedience by them suffering, from the consequences of their actions. However, he still had a plan because God is always thinking about the bigger picture. So if God is saying that he's going to restore your marriage, yes, you might be suffering the consequences of your actions. Yes, your spouse might be doing whatever they want to be doing, but it doesn't mean that they're going to stay doing that thing. However, you are called into your assignment and to operate in the role that God has you operating in. This does not matter if the divorce went through 4 years ago, 2 years ago. If God has called you to stand, then this is something that he's asking you to do. And this is where your eyes are going to begin to open on who you really are to God, okay? So it's bigger than you just getting your marriage restored and your man back. This is about your purpose, the glory of God, and how he's going to use you in the earth according to his assignment, just like how he did Eve. Because Eve, literally, her name is identified as, the definition of Eve is life giver, okay? The mother of all living things. Mother of all, okay? So just think about it. You didn't know what your assignment was until you actually started standing. You didn't know your identity until God actually started teaching you about Him, teaching you, about His kingdom. This because whenever God begins to teach us, He's really preparing us to be used in the way that He wants us to be used, and we begin to operate in our identity, okay? This marital journey, and I know you've heard me say this before, but this marital journey is literally designed to help you build your relationship with God. Everybody starts off confused, all right? Everybody starts off doubting if God is going to do this, because anything that God calls you to, I promise you, it looks impossible, okay? I promise you, you literally are facing something that only God can do. And you have to get to a place where your eyes are not only focused on what happened and you miss your husband and all of these different things. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking away from you being human, right? Because you're human and you're having a very spiritual experience, right? So with that being said, you're going to have these human emotions and things of that nature, but that doesn't solidify your reality. Your reality is actually what God said and what's actually going to happen. And what I'm about to say, many of you could identify this. You are not just someone's wife, all right? That's not the only thing that you are here for, okay? Yes, Eve was created for Adam. So yes, we are created for man. However, we play a part in God's vision for all mankind, all right? So we have a part to play on the vision that God originally has, just like how He had a vision for Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, okay? So ma'am, you are not just fighting for reconciliation. You're breaking cycles, okay? You are literally a vessel that God is using to literally birth out His original plan that He had for you and your husband's marital destiny. When your husband gets to where he needs to be at in God, just like how you had to get there, y'all are going to be a force unreckoned. Y'all are going to be a force, okay? Because that's why the devil is fighting you the way that he is fighting you, okay? It does not matter the rebellion of your spouse right now. What matters is that you heard God, that this is something that God has promised you that He is going to do. That's really all that matters at this point. Like knowing that what the will of God is, knowing that God, you are in this and I am partnering with you. You're in a season in your life where you're learning and you're understanding obedience, where you're being taught being patient, where you're learning how God communicates with you, whether it's through an audible voice or whether it's through dreams or whether it's through revelation. This is where God has called you to be. And don't expect people to understand it. Don't look for people to side with you. I used to be the person, because it just seemed so crazy for me to stay and pray for this man. I would search for other people's wisdom so that they can like validate my doubt or help me understand, like, is this really God? And God did not allow anybody to validate me but Him. Everybody told me I was crazy. You see what I'm saying? So nobody is out of reach. Okay, if God could guide you, God could get your spouse. You got to focus on what God is focused on right now so that you can get the outcome that He has promised you. It's not just about the outcome, but the outcome is for a bigger vision that God has in mind. Okay, I love you and I pray that this video has blessed you.